All right, we got some listener questions, and there's a couple I really wanted to address because I think there's some interesting stuff here. All right. Oh, number one, somebody asked me this: was Mike Sherman good for the locker room, and did he get a raw deal by Ted? Uh, Mike Sherman's the best coach I ever had, the best pro coach I ever had, I should say. My best coach ever was Todd. My best coach was my father, Todd Spencer, Naval Academy. What a human. And Coach B and all those guys. Mike Sherman was a great head coach for me. Very, very analytical. I know I wasn't his favorite guy, but very, very analytical, very smart, new offensive line play inside, and I was an offensive line coach. So, like, was not going to put us in a bad situation. Just had a high demand for excellence. The thing that hurt Mike, and Mike would agree, is I think being a general manager at the same time being a head coach is hard because as you're walking down the hall with Mike's not a, hey, let's chop it up guy. And so if you're a defensive player and your defense is not doing well and you're walking down the hall and you see Mike, are you seeing Mike the coach? Or are you seeing Mike the general manager? And I think that was hard for guys. And I don't think it's something that Mike was doing. I just think in nature of the beast, it was hard. Now, when Ted came in and they took the GM job away, and then they went 4-12, so he gets fired. I think he knew he was getting fired when Ted got hired. I think if you look back at it, my guess is, look, they just stripped me of this position. Holmgren wanted it forever. He had to leave to get it. They stripped me of the position of general manager. They bring in a guy that, while I know him, he's in a different position now where there's a different power. Like the power struggle or dynamics are far different than they used to be. So, but yeah, the short answer is I thought he was a really, really good coach. Really good coach. Number two. Who is closer to making the leap to becoming a dual threat defensive tackle like Kenny Clark this year? I think they were talking about. About Carl Brooks or Wyatt. And I first had to go. In my mind, this is so stupid to me. When I go, is Kenny a dual threat guy? And then I go, oh, he had 7.5 sacks last year. He definitely is a dual threat guy. What are you thinking? Listen, I like Carl Brooks's game better now than Wyatt's. I think Wyatt's probably a better. I'm sure there's like physical attributes you could talk about, but Carl Brooks is one of those guys that just kind of figures out where the ball is really easily, and it's almost like I don't know if you can teach it. And I think he has that quality that you don't always teach. He's just one of those guys who just kind of finds his nose is around the football all the time. I think he's very fluid in his pass rush. I think Devontae's got a lot of things that he improved on, particularly in pad level in the run game from year 1 to year 2. And I think he's going to continue to be that guy. So he's probably going to be the longer term starter there. I just think physically that's probably a realistic comment, but I really like what Carl Brooks can do, particularly in the pass game. He just has a very natural nose for the football. Louis Riddick opened up this narrative about, you're talking about, I don't know if he was talking about quarterbacks and developing and this and that and all the other things. There's a whole of these things going on. I try not to listen to too much of it, but I think Louis Riddick is really, really good at his job. And I think he's very thoughtful. And I think that he makes comments that are based on experience, firsthand experience from him in multiple facets of this game, player, personnel guy. And I think that he doesn't say things to get clicks. I think he's saying things to educate people, to make people's lives more enriched, not to get clicks like some of these other people out there. So he talked about quality, the lack of actual quality coaching staffs in the league, and how going to a specific place is a potential long-term indicator of success for that player. And we talk about it here all the time. For 95% of the players in the National Football League, where you get drafted is going to make or break your career. You get drafted to the Arizona Cardinals, historically, you're not going to do very well unless you're a top guy, because they don't have a good development program. They don't have good staff. They don't have, there's so many things. You get brought into one of the top 8 franchises in the National Football League that have their stuff figured out from a culture standpoint. They have a development programs. They have guys that want to develop. They have mentors. Let's just talk about the things that go into a good program. Okay. And here's where you see this really play out. Well, it's kind of obvious. When you get towards the end of the draft, guys start hoping that they go undrafted instead of getting drafted in like the last round. because now they can choose where they go. And the money doesn't, $5,000, $10,000. They might get a signing bonus. They might not. It might be slotted in for the sixth, seventh round. It might not. But if you get to choose where you're going and you know that that place is invested in you becoming a player, that's a lot different than somebody taking a flyer on you in the last round. And so you see guys continuing to go to specific places because of the history that they have at that place for development. Where you get drafted has more impact on your career for 95% of the guys than any other external factor going. Now, there's all the internal stuff of why you're going to get drafted and how you're going to do, right? Resiliency, professionalism, stick to itedness, whatever, the short-term pain, long-term gain, all the stuff we talk about. But now externally, organizational support, the quality of the coaching staff, the continuity of the coaching staff, right? The changes that they're making have it from year to year have a huge impact. If you're a quarterback and you got 4 coordinators in 4 years, if you're an offensive lineman, you got 4 offensive line coaches in 4 years, you're going to have problems developing. Baker Mayfield, easy. It's such an easy thing to point to. Here's something you don't always hear about is Green Bay Packers. When I get there, locker room culture, 2-time Super Bowl appearance. Leroy Butler, Brett, Chewy, Frank, Reggie, Santana, Gilbert, Nardo, dudes, right? Guys, Dorsey, Zimmerman. There's got everybody, the culture, the expectations, the lack of fear in passing along information to younger players. In other words, I'm good enough. I'm not worried about telling you what I'm doing because I don't think you can do it better than me. Okay? Not every place has that. The desire to develop and the timeline to develop. So I've been on the other side of this where you get in, they talk about developing guys, and really the truth is they talk about it in the off season. Maybe they got somebody who's ahead of, we're heading this program to, race to maturity. But then you get into the season, all they care about is, hey, we got to win this next game. And they stop thinking about how are we going to develop our third guy? How are we going to develop our third round pick into a starter next year? They stop thinking about it because all they're worried about is getting fired. So they got to win that next game. And then if they make it through that year, what can I do in the offseason to make it look like I deserve to be here for it? The plan changes. You think about the perspective of time from a player who's got, if they're lucky, 7 to 10 years, if they're lucky, 7 to 10 years of being a professional athlete versus a coach, personnel guy, and an agent. Those guys are thinking 50-year careers, different teams, different players. Guy comes in, train him up. He does a good job. Maybe you pay him, but he does a good job. You stick around, okay? If you're like position coach, coordinator, you pay him, he leaves, you got to do another one. But you're going to do that for, 10 times, 20 times. You coach him up, you lose games, you feel like you deserve better because you coached him up. You're fired. Now you got to go somewhere else. After a while, what matters to you? You got into the game to develop talent. Now you're just trying to win. Naturally, because winning is what matters. So you forget this other stuff, how important it is. Because maybe you don't think you have time to develop these guys. The player's looking at it like, I only got so much time. I don't got time to waste. If I waste 2 years, I waste 20% of my career because you didn't want to coach me. You got problems. Agents cycle through players, right? What are they always trying to do? Get more players, get more players, get more players. Now, they can treat their players well, but the truth is they're always trying to get more players. Why? Because they know you're going to retire soon. They got to get another guy. They got relationships with teams. Hey, you can go over here, go play for this guy. I know I have this coach. Go play for this coach. I know he's good. Or they're friends with the president, with the general manager, right? We'll get him in. The perspective of time, it's a business, and there's nothing wrong with what anybody's doing. You just have to understand there is a difference. I always look at Evan Mathis. Evan Mathis was an Alabama guard tackle that came in my first year in Carolina. Drafted, I think, second or maybe second round. Freak athlete. I've had him on the show. He's a journeyman for like 5 years. Didn't develop in Carolina. Bounced around a couple different places. He ends up in the Eagles with Coach Mudd. finally gets that guy that says the right thing, puts him in the right position to be successful. Multiple year All Pro, arguably the best guard in football for a couple of years. Big contracts, notoriety, everything you ever wanted. Unsuccessful largely for first 5 years of his career, or nondescript. Freak athlete, has everything, needs that place, right? Finds the right staff, finds the right coach, finds the right situation. It matters. And he's a better athlete than 99% of the people at his position. So I think that is such an interesting talking point for, I don't know how interesting it is for fans, quite frankly, but when you look at your team and when your team is not doing well, when your team consistently has the same problems, when your franchise can't get out of its own way, you know, you go, okay, where is the problem? Has got to start probably at the top with the communication from the owner, the president. But then when you're going down from a leadership, is it, or do we have the head coach's way of doing business? Is it the general manager's way of doing business? Who's in charge? Who's developing the culture? Whose job is it to choose the players? Is it a collaboration? Is it one versus the other? Are they was that a Cipico with? No, that's not the wrong word. Are they in accord with one another, or are constantly the general manager just telling you this is the kind of player I want? You have to develop them. Where's the onus go if the players aren't playing well? All of that stuff has to be figured out. Are you together, or is everybody fighting for their own job? Like, that happens in a ton of these places, and that's why you don't have success. Now, the Packers have been lucky for the most part. They have tenure long. These head coaches have pretty decent tenures, 5 years plus. That's because actually, quite frankly, not having an owner makes it a lot easier. It makes it a ton easier than having some of these guys that made a ton of money doing something else because they're really smart, but they might not be good at this because this is a hobby that pays well. It's different. All right, enough of that. The last one I want to hit is this Devondre Campbell comments. Okay, they came out this week, and I'm just going to tell you flat out before I start. I probably don't know every comment that was made, but the ones that I have right here, I 100% believe every single thing he said. So I'm going to quote these things. I'll give you my thoughts. Quote, listen, if I would have listened to half the stuff they were telling me, I would have never went all pro. All year, all I heard was, can you do this? It'll help the scheme. And I kept saying no all year, and look what happened. First team all pro. Fast forward to the 2022 and 2023 seasons when he got paid, okay? So now you got paid. Now my commentary, got paid, team player, right? I tried to be a team guy and play within the system and do what they asked. Quote, be more visual on the quarterback and not look up routes, end quote, what they're telling him. Back up from the line of scrimmage so I'm not pressing every wide receiver or tight end. Look what happened. They had me and Quay looking clueless. So much hate. You want to know why we played better? Because I started going and having private meetings with Matt LaFleur and telling him we needed to be more aggressive. We needed more man and we needed to blitz more. And what happened when they listened to me? We played well and won. It's no coincidence. There's not a single thing in there. You can like it. You can like that you cannot like that he's airing dirty laundry. He obviously felt like he got done wrong. I think there was another quote in there somewhere saying that he was told he was going to be part of the program and then he wasn't. I know that his play was not as good as it was in that all-pro year. I know that he never played all-pro before that year. I know that he was injured the year after. I know he got paid. I know there's a lot of things to point to and say, well, maybe he's just not that guy. And I'll say this, AG and I tried to get him on the show after his all-pro year, and his representation called and told us that we'd have to pay him thousands and thousands of dollars to show up on our show, and we laughed at him. So you have some thoughts about the way maybe we're doing some of the stuff, but right here, every bit of that makes sense to me, right? He's been in Atlanta. Things aren't going well. He thinks he's a better player than what's showing up on tape. They come here, they're asking him to do a bunch of stuff. He becomes a little bit selfish. He plays extremely well. goes all pro. They pay him. And what happens when you get paid? Hey, man, you got to help us out now. Be our guy, be a team guy. What happens? Your performance goes down. Your performance goes down after a year or two. You get injured. Okay, people are not saying the same things about you in the media. You're not looked at the same way. You go to coach. Hey, listen, like these players are not stupid. They know these players watch so much tape. They have a different perspective in the game than coaches. He goes to the head coach and says, we're not doing this. We're not doing that. They start doing it. They start playing better. Now, is it all because he said something? No. Okay. Are we going to put all the blame on him or all the credit? No. But does what he said make 100% sense to me? Absolutely. All of that makes sense. And it just goes to show you, I think, that a lot of the concerns that you voice when things aren't going well in Green Bay, you're not that far away from some of these other programs. You just happen to have for years and years, you have Hall of Fame quarterbacks. You have now looks like you've got a head coach that from a play calling standpoint is completely in line with his quarterback and his young wide receiver group. And you've got, well, at the time, I think 8 first-round draft picks on defense that are arguably trying to play to their potential or not playing it, whatever it is. And, they've made some adjustments on that side because of it. But none of this stuff, you would be shocked and amazed if you took an honest poll from guys at different places, how much of this stuff resonates. And I can't tell you, I've heard the same thing dozens of times from dozens of defensive players on tons of different teams, both where I played, where I coached, where I consulted, where guys I work with. This happens all the time. And it doesn't make the coaches wrong, okay? But it is interesting to see where valued players are and are not listened to, or we don't make the adjustments in the best interest of our players. Sometimes we do what's best in the best interest of or most comfortable for the coaches because ultimately they have to call the game and all that stuff. And where do you make those concessions? If Reggie White goes in there and says, I'm not doing this, maybe the life's different, but he's not Reggie. So where does that fall? I just think it's a really, really interesting look. I think organizational culture is the most interesting thing you can watch with these teams, right? Just like in business. And when you're trying to pick a winner in business, you're trying to pick a stock to buy into or invest in. When you're trying to pick a company that you want to devote time or resources into, when you look at this, you want to devote your attention to as a player, as a coach, as an organizational member, as a fan. All of this stuff is so interesting to me, how they operate, and you take so much for all the problems that every culture or every company has, every organization has. Listen, nobody's perfect. Everybody's got bad apples. Everybody's got problems and issues they deal with. Everybody's got situations like these where there's a player who's disgruntled and speaks out. Everyone's got a situation like this where a player leaves and says, oh, these things could have happened. I'm saying that this is probably true. There's a lot of stuff that probably isn't or embellished. There's a lot of this that makes a lot of sense. And what do you take away from that? It's probably good that they moved on from that defensive staff. That's the big takeaway. So, guys, thanks as always for bringing in your questions, particularly those last two. It's always I don't know. Look at what this shows. You've probably guessed. I'm pretty much talking about the stuff that I find interesting, and hope that you find it interesting as well. So that's why I try to get some questions from the listeners as much as I can, because I might as well be on a different planet sometimes with things that go through my head. But thank you as always for watching. Thanks to the Bet Online for our sponsorship. Find me at Michael168 on Twitter, Process to Perform X, Process to Perform on Instagram. And as always, hit that subscribe button, like us, share us, all that stuff. Thank you, guys.